Hello, this is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam. Haven't been back with a video for a couple of weeks now as I was working on my own meditation and enjoying the summer here in the city. And I thought I would catch up on some of the topics that I've been capturing in the meantime. One of them being this notion of uncertainty, how it links to the ego, and how we can use it also as a tool to weed out an ego that is otherwise quite clever at making us believe that we are already very advanced, or that perhaps we have reached the pinnacle of our understanding and development in the area of self-cultivation. Now, the title of the video is chosen because I am linking uncertainty to the question of identity. You see, ultimately, identity is used by the egoic functions of the mind as a kind of anchoring, or a kind of central point of certainty and control. Another way to put this would be to say that the ego finds it very disturbing not to have a kind of reference point that it can take as a sort of cornerstone for its operations. And that without that cornerstone, without that central point or point of reference from which to operate, it finds itself kind of lost and sometimes very, very disturbed, as happens when things take place in our life that shake our sense of who we are. And therefore, the question of uncertainty goes way beyond just, let's say, that the practical side of life, or knowing whether things will pan out for us the way we want, and goes all the way into the domain of who we believe ourselves to be. What I'm trying to say, in a nutshell, is that we keep our identities in place in order to not face life at large in a completely uncertain way where anything goes. That would be intolerable to our egoic mind. And this is important because what is being asked of us as we do our self-cultivation processes, and we undertake practices like self-inquiry, which is meant to clarify and thereby undermine our sense of self, is we are being asked to get to a point where we come to realize that our identity is not only not known, but also not really knowable. Meaning, or rather, another way to say this would be to say that who, or rather what we are, takes at least one lifetime to reveal itself. That would be another way to say it. In other words, we would like to believe that who we are is something that is knowable already right here and now, in an objective kind of way. And we typically define that by our physical vehicle, our body. And we also define that by our psychological vehicle and our personality. So the kind of things that we like, the kind of responses that we show in the face of life events, or how we interact with people, the place we come from, the kind of thing that we do for a living. We bundle that up. We make a kind of composite picture, and we say, well, this is who I am. It's a bunch of objects that define me, uh, it's clearly not who I am. It's a bunch of objective attributes, but at least they're knowable, and they're knowable right here and now, and that's kind of a pacifier for the egoic mind. And what we're saying is that from the perspective of the perennial philosophy, who we are is something that is constantly unfolding, and that it unfolds over time, and that it takes actually our entire lifetime, if not more lifetimes. We don't need to go as far as that, doesn't really matter, to reveal itself. And therefore, what we are is kind of a big question mark. It's a question mark that is being answered at every moment, all the time. And whether it's a single lifetime or several, by the way, makes no difference to the ego. I mean, what makes a difference to the ego is whether you can know it right here and now and have certainty about it, or whether it is just not knowable in the way that the ego would like it to be known. And so this can be quite distressful, actually. And as layers of our sense of self start to erode through the practices of self-inquiry, especially, and resolution of trauma, we find our sense of self becoming diluted and expanding into the environment. And we find our area of concern also expanding with that. But to the degree that we expand, to the degree that we become, as the Buddhists would say, one with everything, is to that same degree, the sense of certainty starts to go out the window. Now, luckily, as the sense of certainty goes out the window, the need for certainty goes out the window as well. However, there are periods in which our need for certainty is higher than our sense of certainty. Let me put it like this. As we do emotional work, we will find ourselves in having episodes in which we are dealing with a lot of confusion and a lot of cognitive dissonance. These are moments in which the things that used to give us certainty have been removed, but the egoic sense that requires that certainty is still kind of in place, and it's kind of craving for it. So there's a kind of gap, there's a void where that sense of certainty used to be. And we need to learn and integrate that and come to terms with the notion that we don't really need that, and that we never really had that certainty. Very often we hear teachers say that what we need to simply see is that the ego was never real, and that is correct. So that certainty, we never had it, but we had the illusion of certainty because certain ideas in the mind or certain parts of our supposed identity had become petrified. So so this is a very interesting dance, and it's a dance that, as spirituality progresses, becomes more and more challenging, as I said. So in the beginning, we are dealing with questions such as, what should I do about practical things in life, or what should I do about the more sort of meaningful things in life? But as we progress, we start to come across things that are much, much more fundamental than that. The very sense of identity starts to become questioned, and we come to notice that, as far as the egoic mind is concerned, living as a question mark is completely untenable. It can't be done because the egoic mind is an entire, very complex and hyper sophisticated mechanism to keep us safe. And in order to keep us safe, we better know what we are and what it is that we're contending with, right? So when we start to undermine that, it feels very, very uncomfortable. And it's there are definitely periods that are just not very pleasant. Let's put it like that, right? Very, very intense, distressful emotions coming up. What can we do about this, and what can we fall back upon when this starts to happen? The answer, I risk sounding like a bit of a broken record, but it goes back to, are we grounded in our somatics? Have we been doing enough embodiment work so that we can place ourselves in a perceptual here and now that can show our body that we are safe? In other words, when emotional distress comes up, the worst cocktail that you can have is emotional distress of existential angst coming up, and have that trigger the sense of unsafety in the body, right? Like that's a very, very difficult mix to contend with. But if we can bring up emotional distress whilst our body is in touch with the perceptual now, in which everything is perfectly safe, then we just have to deal with the discomfort, right? So unsafety and discomfort can become decoupled by cultivative practices of this kind. Listening to these kind of talks, of which there are plenty on YouTube, make it so that you know that this is a normal part of the process, and that you are able to deal with that distress, and that it will pass. It's also very, very helpful. It definitely helps to have a group, or at least a single counterpart, if not a coach, a friend, or a family member who resonates with this and who can provide a little bit of grounding, a little bit of support. Definitely helps. And I would say when things get fairly intense, to have a feel for what your body and your mind need at that point. I was talking to someone that I've been coaching now for a good couple of years, who has made incredible progress and deepening. And she had a very intense release episode a couple of weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, while she was doing work by herself. And a lot of opening was taking place. It was very, very intense. It was happening while she was in the shower. And she told herself, well, I need to not have this happen right now, because I told myself that I was going to be self-loving and consistent, and part of that included going to the gym. Now, I applauded the zeal and the consistency and the self-love part, and making sure that you're going to the gym and doing these things. At the same time, when a wave of release of this kind comes to you, you don't want to waste that opportunity. You want to make sure that you capitalize on it, because a lot of the work that we do is so that these waves of release and emotionality finally find a pathway out. So we don't want to hijack that. We don't want to postpone it. We want to cater to it. And secondly, when something like this is happening, your system is going to go through quite a shake. And you're under no obligation to keep to your normal schedule when something like this happens, because it is incredibly taxing to the nervous system. So we need to have a feel for that as well. Now, in recap to today's video, I would say that it's good to understand that the process of self-cultivation and awakening are ultimately a process by which we come to see through all the crutches and bypassing and avoidance and disingenuity that we use to pacify ourselves, and all the pretense, including pretending that we know who we are, as opposed to coming to terms with the fact that what we are and what life is just one huge unfolding question mark. That's where we are going towards. And it's a process of going there, of learning to become that perceptual question mark that is unfolding throughout life. And that the ego will at every point try to answer and come to a positionality that gives it a sense of certainty. And And the ultimate certainty is having a sense of identity, and that's the very thing that we are undermining in this process. So it's going to be uncomfortable by definition, and to the ego is utterly intolerable because of the kind of mental function that it is. It is meant to keep us safe through creating certainty almost at any cost, you could say. And that is the very thing that we are trying to put in its place, let's call it like that. We're not trying to eliminate the ego, we're simply trying to not have it be the be all and end all, but rather to be simply a protective mechanism that is doing a job as opposed to what we are. So that very process is going to create a lot of discomfort. So to be a question mark is definitely uncomfortable. The way to get there is uncomfortable. But with every degree of discomfort and opening that takes place, once that becomes integrated, it just becomes much more open, much more effective, much more exciting. And so it's definitely worth going in that direction. But you can expect for sure, almost certainly, the road there to be a little bit wobbly and rocky as we get there. So this is an invitation to recognize that as part of the process, and to keep going if you're already doing that. So as usual, very curious to hear what you guys make of the topic, and if you think that it is helpful to others and that there's value in this channel, then your liking, sharing, and subscribing makes it more available to others out there. Thanks for listening. I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. Cheerio. Bye-bye.